Okay, breaking news to bring to you. Israel's Attorney General has indicted the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on multiple corruption charges. He has said that he is not guilty in any of these cases. Of course, all this is happening as Israel is in the middle of basically a political stalemate.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that his indictment in a corruption case is an attempted coup.
Netanyahu is charged with fraud, bribery, and breach of trust. It is the first time a sitting prime minister in Israel has faced criminal charges. He's accused of offering bribes in exchange for favorable media coverage and allegedly accepting $250,000 in gifts for political favors. Netanyahu called for an independent committee to investigate the investigators.
In a defiant statement on Thursday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected his indictment on corruption charges, calling it an attempted coup.
אני לא אתן לשקר לנצח. אני אמשיך להוביל את המדינה לפי החוק, בדיוק כפי שכתוב. אמשיך להוביל את המדינה באחריות, במסירות, תוך דאגה לביטחון ולעתיד של כולנו.
Capping a 3-year investigation, Israel's Attorney General formally charged Netanyahu with fraud, breach of trust, and bribery in 3 different scandals. It is the first time a sitting Israeli Prime Minister has been charged with a crime.
יום שבו היועץ המשפטי לממשלה מחליט על הגשת כתב אישום נגד ראש ממשלה מכהן בגין עבירות חמורות של שחיתות שלטונית הוא יום קשה ועצוב מבחינת הציבור בישראל ומבחינתי באופן אישי.
According to the indictment, Netanyahu accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars of champagne and cigars from billionaire friends, offered to trade favors with the newspaper publisher, and used his influence to help a wealthy magnate in exchange for favorable news coverage. The damning indictment comes at a time when Israel's political system appears to be headed toward a 3rd election in under a year. After an inconclusive election in September, both Netanyahu and his chief rival, Benny Gantz, failed to form a majority coalition in parliament.
נתניהו צריך לזכור, בישראל עדיין יש דמוקרטיה גם אם היא פחות מדברת אליו.
The indictment does not require Netanyahu to resign, but it significantly weakens him at a politically tumultuous time. The country is now entering an unprecedented 21-day period during which any member of parliament can try to rally a 61-member majority to become prime minister. If that fails, new elections would be triggered. Noreen Nasser, The Associated Press.
Let's go to our Harry Fawcett, who's gathering more information on this. So, Harry, this has kind of been hanging over Benjamin Netanyahu's head for quite a while. Tell us what's happening.
For years, indeed, yes. The corruption case, the investigation at least started in December 2016, and the Attorney General recommended that he be indicted in these 3 separate corruption cases back in February. And now, finally, we have the indictment. Now, this has never happened in Israel before, that a sitting prime minister has been charged with offences as serious as these. Most importantly, in one of the 3 cases, he's been charged with bribery. So let's quickly go through the cases in question. In that case, this is known as Case 4000 here in Israel. Netanyahu is alleged to have used his power as the then communications minister as well as prime minister to give regulatory benefits to a hugely important media magnate here, the owner of the main telecoms company, benefits worth up to $500 million US. And in return, Netanyahu, according to the indictment, was demanding favorable coverage in the online news website that was also owned by this man, Shaul Elovitch. The Attorney General, in his initial recommendation, said that an extraordinary, frequent relationship emerged between Netanyahu, his wife Sarah, and the Elovitches. They were demanding, he said, details down to how long individual stories would stay on the website. And so, as well as bribery in this case, he's been charged with fraud and breach of trust. Fraud and breach of trust also in another case where he was alleged to have communicated with the owner of a very important newspaper here, again demanding favourable coverage in return for hampering the activities of a rival newspaper. And in the third case, perhaps more straightforward and easy to understand, simply accepting and demanding gifts, both him and his wife Sarah Netanyahu, demanding gifts such as cigars and champagne from very wealthy individuals Conflict of interest was the key charge against him. In that, the Attorney General again charging him with fraud and breach of trust in that case. So this is an extraordinary bombshell for Netanyahu, even though we've kind of known it's been coming, especially in recent days. And as you say, it comes at the time when there is no proper formed government. Netanyahu is in charge of a transitional government.
So, yeah, let's talk more about that. The backdrop of all this is that, yes, things are basically at a stalemate. Has Benjamin Netanyahu ever indicated that he would ever resign if he were ever indicted? Does he have to resign?
Well, he has certainly shown no willingness to resign whatsoever, quite the reverse. And it's pretty clear that he intends to fight on with everything he has. We will hear from him in a couple of hours at 8:30 local time. But yes, the question that hangs over this, in fact, there are two. There's a legal question and there's a political question when it comes to Netanyahu's future. The legal question really revolves around a law which says a minister must step down if indicted in a criminal case such as this. But it doesn't specify whether that includes the Prime Minister as well. And so the assumption from Netanyahu and his team is that he will be allowed to carry on, especially if Israel goes to a third election, continuing all the way through till March as the caretaker prime minister. But this could be challenged in the Supreme Court, and we understand that there are teams from various political parties, opponents of Netanyahu's, who stand ready to lodge an appeal with the Supreme Court to try to get them to rule that Netanyahu must resign as prime minister while this case remains active. The other thing is the political question, whether, given the seriousness of these charges, he will be able to maintain his support, especially within his own Likud party. Up until now, there has been pretty strong support from him within Likud. But just today, the very day that the 21-day period has kicked off, when the opportunity for forming a coalition government goes to anyone in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, who can muster enough support, on that same day, Gideon Saar, a senior Likud figure, has said that if Israel goes to another round of elections, he says there should be a leadership election before that within Likud so that he can stand to be Prime Minister of Israel, not Netanyahu. This will only strengthen his case, given that Netanyahu is now on the record, finally, no questions in this at all, charged with an extremely serious crime such as bribery, along with fraud and breach of trust.
Okay, Harry Fawcett with that big breaking story. Thank you, Harry, very much.